Listen, people will talk. They'll whisper, they'll point, they'll laugh. They'll say, you're scared. You're afraid to step into the fight. But let me tell you something. Fear isn't running from battle. Fear is letting others decide your destiny while you sit silent. Fear is living a life without purpose, without direction, without backbone. See, anybody can pick up a weapon. Anybody can throw a punch. That doesn't make you brave. Real courage is saying no when the crowd demands yes. Real courage is standing tall when the world tries to bend you. Real courage is fighting the war that actually matters. The war for your soul, your dignity, your people, your future. They think you're afraid. Afraid of what? I don't fear standing alone. I don't fear losing titles, money, or praise. I fear only one thing, betraying who I am. Because if I give up my principles, if I give up my truth, then I've already lost the fight before it even begins. A man isn't measured by the noise of his fists or the medals on his chest. A man is measured by his conviction, by his discipline, by the legacy he leaves when the lights go out. So call me what you want. Coward, rebel, fool. It doesn't matter. Because history does remember the names of those who shouted. It remembers the ones who stood firm. And when the dust settles, when the noise fades, the world will see I wasn't afraid of war. I was brave enough to choose peace. I wasn't weak for standing alone. I was strong enough to live by my truth. That right there is victory. That right there is greatness. Would you like me to tighten this into a short 2-3 minute speech ideal for video voiceover? Or keep it as a longer, more detailed keynote style delivery? You say they text files, or in the name. It should have a logical flow, be powerful, and use emotional appeal to inspire the audience. Ensure the content is easy to follow and relatable. Do not use small line. ChatGPT said, got it, you want me to expand the first point, a courage and blindness, into about 700 words with no conclusion or ending? I'll make it flow powerfully. Keep it in a Muhammad Ali inspired style, bold, lyrical, and rhythmic, but still easy to follow. Here's the expanded script for point 1. Courage isn't blindness. They say courage is running headfirst into danger, charging into the storm, throwing yourself into the fire without thinking twice. That's what the world teaches us. Movies, stories, and old traditions glorify this kind of courage. But let me tell you the truth, courage is not recklessness, and bravery is not blindness. Anybody can run into a fight without thinking. Anybody can throw themselves into chaos just to prove they're not scared. That's not courage. That's desperation. That's ego. That's pride dressed up like strength. Real courage is different. Real courage is when you take a deep breath, when you measure the cost, when you ask yourself, is this fight worth it? Is this the battle that matters? Because courage without wisdom is a fast road to regret. Courage without purpose is nothing more than foolishness in disguise. Think about it. What good is charging into a battle that doesn't belong to you? What good is proving you're not afraid if the price is losing your soul, losing your dignity, losing the very thing that makes you who you are? The world will always push you to fight their battles. The crowd will always test you, daring you to prove yourself on their terms. The bravest thing you can do is look that crowd in the eye and say, I don't need to fight just to prove I'm strong. My strength is knowing which battles are worth my blood and which battles are worth my silence. See, the loudest voices will call you a coward when you walk away. He's a champ. They'll say you're running. They'll say you're hiding. They'll say you're afraid. But in reality, it takes more courage to walk away from the wrong fight than it does to dive headfirst into it. Why? Because walking away demands self-control, discipline, and a strength that can't be seen on the outside. Anyone can swing a fist, but not everyone can master themselves. True courage is wisdom in action. It's the ability to see beyond the moment, to understand the weight of your decisions, to know that every action has a consequence that ripples beyond just you. It's realizing that bravery is not about pleasing the crowd, but about answering to something deeper. Your conscience, your principles, your truth. Look around the world. How many people have lost everything because they fought the wrong battles? How many lives have been wasted proving a point that didn't matter in the end? How many men and women have sacrificed their future just to win arguments in the present? That's not bravery, that's blindness. But when you have true courage, you're not moved by the noise, you're not shaken by the pressure, you're not distracted by the insults. You don't let other people's opinions dictate your actions. You stand firm, you trust your judgment, and you choose wisely. That's the difference between someone who wants to look strong and someone who actually is strong. Because let's be honest, strength isn't about showing off. Strength isn't about proving people wrong. Strength is about living in a way that aligns with who you are. Strength is about protecting your values even when it costs you applause. Strength is about holding back when the world demands you explode, and the stepping forward when the world tells you to sit down. That's real bravery. And don't think it's easy. Don't think for 1 second that having this kind of courage comes without struggle. It's not easy to be called weak when you know in your heart you're strong. It's not easy to be misunderstood when you're standing by your principles. It's not easy to walk away when everything in you wants to prove yourself right now in this moment. But courage isn't about the easy road. Courage is about the right road, the higher road. The road that leads you to peace with yourself, even if it means war with the crowd. When you understand, you'll realize something powerful. Courage isn't about what other people see. It's about what you know. It's not about being fearless. It's about acting with purpose in spite of fear. It's not about fighting every battle. It's about choosing the battle that defines you, the battle that shapes your destiny, the battle that leaves a mark long after you're gone. That's why courage can't be blind. Because blindness leads to destruction, but true vision, true clarity leads to legacy. And that kind of courage doesn't just change your life, it changes everything around you. People talk about courage as if it only lives on the battlefield. They think bravery is putting on a uniform, carrying a gun, marching into someone else's land to fight someone else's war. They think the only enemies worth naming live overseas in some foreign country wearing a different flag. But let me open your eyes to the truth. Your greatest enemy doesn't always sit across an ocean. Sometimes your greatest enemy sits right here, close enough to touch, invisible but powerful, hiding in plain sight. The real war isn't always the one governments announce. The real war isn't always written in the headlines or broadcast on the evening news. The real war is in your neighborhood, in your schools, in your homes, and in your mind. The real enemy is not just armies and weapons. It is injustice. It is inequality. It is ignorance. It is fear. And if you don't learn to recognize these enemies, you will fight the wrong battles your whole life and never win the war that truly matters. What good is it to march into another land, to defeat someone you've never met, while poverty destroys the children in your own city? What good is it to fight strangers across the globe, while your own people are fighting hunger, fighting oppression, fighting to simply survive? If you don't know your real enemy, you'll spend your life shadow boxing, throwing punches into the air, exhausting yourself in battles that never mattered in the first place. Let me make it clear, the enemy isn't always a person. The enemy is a system that denies opportunity. The enemy is a mindset that says you are less than what you are capable of being. The enemy is the fear that keeps you from stepping forward, the doubt that whispers you're not enough, the chains that keep you locked where you are while others decide your future. That's the enemy worth fighting. But here's the challenge here. Those enemies don't wear uniforms. They don't march in lines. They don't carry flags. They live in silence, small in the smallences, in the injustice that pile up every single day. They live in the way doors are closed in your face, in the way your worth is questioned, in the way your dreams are dismissed before they've even begun. And it takes courage, real courage, to name those enemies out loud and stand against them. You want to know real bravery? It's not fighting a war someone else chose for you. It's standing in front of the world and saying, I know my fight. I know where the real battle lies. And I will not be distracted by what others call courage when I see the truth with my own eyes. That kind of bravery doesn't always win you medals, but it wins you respect. The kind of respect that lasts longer than applause, longer than titles, longer than recognition. Because when you truly know your enemy, you stop wasting your strength on empty battles. You stop letting other people drag you into wars that don't define you. You stop playing the role they want you to play, and you begin to fight with purpose, with clarity, with focus. That's how you change the game. That's how you turn weakness into power. That's how you stop surviving and start leading. And here's something else to remember. The enemy isn't just out there. It's in here. Sometimes the biggest war is not with the world, but with yourself. The enemy is laziness that whispers, do it tomorrow. The enemy is comfort that says, stay where it's safe. The enemy is pride that drives you into foolish fights just to prove you're not afraid. When you know that, you understand the battle isn't about bullets and bombs. It's about discipline, self-control, and vision. So don't be fooled. Don't let anyone convince you that the only way to prove your courage is to fight their battles. The bravest thing you can do is fight the battles that matter most. The battle against ignorance, against injustice, against fear, against the limits placed on you by others and by yourself. When you know your enemy, you know your mission. And when you know your mission, nothing can stop you. People think strength is all about muscles. They think it's about how much weight you can lift, how hard you can punch, how long you can fight before falling down. That's the picture the world sells us. Strength is something physical, something you can measure with numbers, something you can see with your eyes. But the truth is bigger than that, deeper than that, more powerful than that. Because strength doesn't just live in your body. It lives in your mind, in your spirit, in your will. Strength has many faces, and if you only look for one, you'll miss the most important kind. You see, anybody can be strong for a moment. Anybody can puff out their chest, throw a punch, or shout loud enough to silence a room. But real strength isn't about moments. It's about endurance. It's about what you do when nobody is watching, when there's no crowd to cheer, no lights to shine, no cameras to record. Strength is what keeps you standing when life hits you harder than any opponent ever could. Strength is getting back up after the fall, not because the world is waiting, but because your spirit refuses to stay down. Think about this. It takes strength to control your temper when anger is boiling in your chest. It takes strength to walk away from a fight you know will destroy more than it proves. It takes strength to forgive when bitterness would be easier. It takes strength to keep faith alive when everything around you screams to give up. These are the faces of strength people rarely see because they don't shine in the spotlight. They don't make headlines, they don't earn applause, but they are the foundation of true power. Let me tell you something else. Strength is not about domination. Strength is not about standing over someone weaker than you, proving you can crush them. That's not strength, that's insecurity. Real strength is protecting those who can't protect themselves. Real strength is lifting others up while you're climbing. Real strength is holding your ground without needing to push others down. That's why strength wears many faces, because it is not always loud, not always flashy, not always obvious. Sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is patient, sometimes it is soft. But make no mistake, it is just as unshakable, just as unstoppable, just as powerful. The world will try to trick you into thinking that strength only comes from victory. Win the fight, earn the title, hold the trophy. That's what they call strong. But let me tell you, there are people who never stood in a ring, never wore a medal, never held a belt, yet they carry a strength so fierce, so unbreakable, that no title could ever measure it. A mother working 3 jobs to feed her children, that's strength. A young man who turns away from the streets to follow a better path, that's strength. A student who refuses to quit even when the odds are stacked against them, that's strength. Strength has many faces because life demands it in many forms. One day it may ask you to fight. The next day it may ask you to wait. Another day it may ask you to sacrifice, to endure, to believe when believing feels impossible. And every time you rise to that demand, every time you answer that call, you show a different face of your strength. And don't be fooled into thinking that strength means you never break. Even the strongest people bend. Even the strongest people cry. Even the strongest people stumble. Strength doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means you don't let pain control you. Strength doesn't mean you never fall. It means you rise over and over, no matter how many times it takes. That's why strength has many faces, because it shows itself in resilience, in persistence, in the refusal to quit even when quitting feels easier. So when you look at yourself, don't just ask, how strong am I? Ask, how many faces of strength am I willing to show? Am I strong enough to fight when it's time? Am I strong enough to stay calm when the world tests me? Am I strong enough to keep moving when the path is heavy? Am I strong enough to believe in myself when nobody else does? That's the kind of strength that changes lives. That's the kind of strength that doesn't fade when the spotlight is gone. That's the kind of strength that speaks louder than any punch, louder than any shout, louder than any victory. Because strength, real strength, wears many faces, and every one of them tells the world, I cannot be broken. Everybody loves to talk about principles until it's time to pay for them. It's easy to stand for something when there's no cost. It's easy to hold your head high when the world applauds you for it. But the real test comes when your principles put you at odds with the crowd. When holding on to your truth means losing everything the world told you was valuable. That's when principles stop being words and start becoming a price. See, anyone can believe in something when it's convenient. Anybody can stand tall when the lights are bright and the praise is loud. But principles aren't proven in comfort. They are proven in sacrifice. What do you do when standing by your beliefs costs you a job? What do you do when speaking your truth costs you friends, opportunities, maybe even your freedom? What do you do when doing what's right means walking alone into a storm? That is where principles show their weight. Let me tell you, principles are expensive. They will cost you sleep. They will cost you comfort. They will cost you security. Sometimes they will cost you everything you thought you wanted. But what you get in return is worth more than all of that combined. Because when you live by your principles, you buy peace of mind. You buy integrity. You buy the knowledge that when you look in the mirror, you're not staring at a sellout. You're staring at someone who refused to bow, someone who refused to break. And understand this, the world won't always cheer for you when you hold on to your principles. In fact, most of the time, it will jeer, it will laugh, it will call you foolish. People will ask, why throw away the spotlight? Why walk away from the prize? Why turn down the easy road? They won't understand because they measure value in dollars, in status, in trophies. But you're not here to be measured by the world. You're here to be measured by your soul. And your soul only recognizes one kind of currency, truth. Principles are the line you refuse to cross, even when crossing it would be easier. They are the anchor that holds you steady when the current pulls hard. Without them, you might gain the world, but you'll lose yourself. And what good is all the applause, all the money, all the recognition if at the end of the night you lay down in your bed and feel hollow inside? What good is winning if you had to sell your soul to do it? Now don't get me wrong. Living by principles is not glamorous. It's not shiny. It's not always rewarded. You won't always get pats on the back for it. Sometimes you'll be forgotten. Sometimes you'll be criticized. Sometimes you'll be punished. But history has a way of remembering people who stood by their principles. Not because they had everything, but because they were willing to risk everything. Think about it. Every person we admire, every leader, every fighter, every voice that left a mark on history, they all paid a price for their principles. They were mocked. They were shamed. They were doubted. They were stripped of status. Sometimes even stripped of freedom. But their principles made them unshakable. And because they refused to compromise, because they held the line when it would have been easier to give in, their names are remembered long after the names of those who criticize them are forgotten. You see, principles are not just beliefs. They are the backbone of who you are. Without them, you bend to every wind, you fall to every pressure, you dance to every tune the world plays. But with them, you stand firm. You may bend, but you will not break. You may stumble, but you will not surrender. And even if you lose everything else, you keep the one thing nobody can take it, your integrity. So yes, there's a price for principles. It's heavy. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels unbearable. But every time you pay it, you're building something far greater than wealth or fame. You're building a legacy. You're proving that your life wasn't shaped by fear, but by courage. You're proving that your destiny wasn't bought by others, but carved by your own hand, guided by your own truth. That's the price of principles. And though it's costly, it's the only price worth paying. For too long, the world has tried to tell us what it means to be a man. They say manhood is about fighting. They say it's about proving yourself tougher than the next guy. They say it's about never backing down, never showing weakness, never letting a tear fall. That's the old story, the one written by people who confuse pride with power and ego with honor. But let me tell you, that story is wrong. That story has trapped too many men in cages they built for themselves. It's time to rewrite it. It's time to redefine what it really means to be a man. Manhood is not about how many punches you can throw. Manhood is not about how loud you can shout or how many people you can intimidate. That's not strength. That's insecurity dressed up in muscle and noise. A real man doesn't fight because someone dared him to. A real man doesn't need to prove himself in every challenge thrown his way. A real man chooses his battles with wisdom. And sometimes the greatest proof of his strength is the courage to walk away. Because here's the truth. Any fool can start a fight. Any fool can throw a fist, pull a trigger, or speak violence into the air. But it takes discipline to stay calm under pressure. It takes maturity to think before you act. It takes vision to understand that not every challenge is worth your energy. That's manhood. It's not reckless pride. It's controlled power. It's not chasing every battle. It's knowing which battles actually matter. But let's go deeper. Manhood is not about conquering others. It's about conquering yourself. Can you master your temper? Can you silence your fear? Can you push yourself when your body is tired? When your mind wants to quit? So when your spirit is tested by doubt, that's real manhood. Not the easy strength of domination, but the harder strength of discipline. And manhood is not just about standing for yourself. It's about standing for others. A man who only cares about his own survival, his own comfort, his own victory. That's not a man, that's a child in a grown body. Real manhood means protecting those who can't protect themselves. Real manhood means being a voice when others are silenced, being a shield when others are attacked, being a light when others are stumbling in the dark. That's the kind of strength that builds families, that builds communities, that builds nations. Now, let's talk about something the world doesn't like to admit. Manhood is not about never showing weakness. The strongest men cry. The strongest men admit when they are wrong. The strongest men aren't afraid to say, I need help. Because pretending to be invincible isn't manhood. It's fear of being judged. Real manhood is honest. It's authentic. It's knowing that vulnerability doesn't weaken you. It makes you human. And it takes more courage to be real than to wear a mask. And don't think for 1 second that manhood is measured by how much you own, how much money you make, how many titles you collect. That's the world's scoreboard, and it's broken. A man is not measured by the size of his bank account, but by the size of his character. Not the power he has over others, but by the integrity he carries within himself. Not by how much he takes, but by how much he gives. The time has come to strip away the lies about what it means to be a man. Manhood is not violence. Manhood is not domination. Manhood is not silence in the face of injustice. Manhood is courage, but not the courage to fight. The courage to love, the courage to stand for truth, the courage to live with honor, even when honor costs you everything. Redefining manhood means stepping into a higher standard. It means rejecting the idea that toughness is about coldness. It means proving that compassion is not weakness, that respect is not surrender, that peace is not fear. It means showing the world that a real man doesn't need to destroy to prove his strength. He builds, he uplifts, he protects, he inspires. So when they tell you to be a man, don't look at the shallow picture they paint. Look deeper. Look at the men who stand on principles when the world turns against them. Look at the men who keep their integrity when temptation offers an easier path. Look at the men who choose dignity over applause, discipline over ego, truth over comfort. That's manhood. That's the definition worth living by. The world loves the spotlight, the flashing light, the attention. That's what people chase. They think success is measured in how loud the crowd cheers, how many headlines carry your name, how long your face stays on the front page. But let me tell you something about the spotlight. It burns bright and then it fades. The world moves on. The cheers get quiet. The lights go out. And if all you ever chased was the limelight, you'll be left in the dark with nothing to show for it. Legacy. That's different. Legacy doesn't fade when the cameras stop rolling. Legacy doesn't disappear when the crowd goes home. Legacy is the echo that keeps speaking long after your voice is gone. Legacy is the imprint you leave on people's lives, the example you set, the standard you raise, the fire you spark in someone else's heart. Legacy is not about being seen for a moment. It's about being remembered for a lifetime. The limelight tempts you with quick rewards. It offers applause, trophies, medals, and recognition. But all of that is temporary. Ask yourself, how many champions have held the spotlight only to be forgotten a few years later? How many stars burn bright for a season only to vanish without leaving a trace? The limelight is fleeting. Legacy is eternal. You see, the limelight is about you, but legacy is about others. The limelight asks, how many people saw you? Legacy asks, how many people did you change? The limelight says, look at me. Legacy says, follow me. The limelight ends when the moment ends. Legacy begins when the moment is over. And don't get it twisted. Chasing legacy is harder than chasing the spotlight, because legacy demands sacrifice. Legacy asks you to think beyond yourself, beyond today, beyond comfort. Legacy asks you to plant seeds you may never see grow. Legacy asks you to fight battles, not just for your own victory, but for the generations that come after you. That's not easy. That doesn't always bring applause. But that's the only way to make your life truly matter. Here's the truth: when you live for the limelight, you live for people's approval. You live for their cheers, their claps, their validation. But the same people who cheer for you today can turn their backs on you tomorrow. That's the weakness of chasing the spotlight. You hand over your worth to strangers. But when you live for legacy, you live for something bigger. You live for principles, for values, for purpose. You live in a way that even if the world turns its back on you, history will honor your name. And think about this. Your legacy isn't just in the great things you accomplish, it's in the little things. The way you treat people, the way you carry yourself, the way you respond to adversity. Somebody is always watching, always learning, always being shaped by your example. Legacy isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. It's about showing up, standing firm, and living your truth day after day, year after year, until your life tells a story too strong to be erased. Look around. Most people want to be remembered for what they had, their money, their fame, their status. But when it's all said and done, the world doesn't care what you had. The world cares about what you gave. What did you give to your family? What did you give to your community? What did you give to the world? That's your legacy. So the question isn't, how long can I stand in the limelight? The real question is, what will I leave behind when the lights go out? Will people remember you for the noise you made, or for the difference you made? Will they talk about your trophies, or will they talk about your character? Will they remember your victories, or will they remember your values? Because the limelight is a moment. Legacy is forever. And the choice is yours every single day. Will you live for the applause of now, or will you live for the echo of eternity? Confidence is not about walking into a room and hoping people notice you. Confidence is not about shouting the loudest, dressing the flashiest, or trying to convince others you're strong. Real confidence is deeper than that. Real confidence doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. It doesn't ask for permission. It moves with certainty. Real confidence is quiet, steady, unshakable, rooted so deep that no insult, no doubt, no storm can tear it away. At your dreams, doubt your abilities. They will tell you what you can't do, what you're not smart enough for, what you're not strong enough to handle. And if you let their voices define you, you'll spend your life shrinking, second guessing, apologizing for who you are. That's not living, that's surviving. But unshakable confidence doesn't live off their approval. It doesn't crumble under criticism. It stands tall, even when the world is shouting, sit down. Unshakable confidence is knowing who you are before the world tries to tell you who you should be. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I know my worth. I know my value. I know my power. Not because someone else told you, but because you've seen it, you've lived it, you've fought for it. Confidence is not pretending to be invincible. It's knowing you're not perfect, but walking with power anyway. Let me make it plain. Confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud because it's weak. Arrogance brags because it's afraid of being exposed. Confidence doesn't need to shout. It speaks through action. Confidence doesn't need to prove. It shows in consistency. Confidence is the quiet fire in your eyes, the calm in your voice, the steady step in your walk. When you carry that kind of confidence, people feel it before you say a word. But here's the secret: unshakable confidence isn't born overnight. It's built. It's built every time you push through fear, every time you get back up after falling, every time you bet on yourself when nobody else would. Our confidence grows in the moments when you want to quit, but choose to keep going. Confidence grows in the silence, in the grind, in the lonely hours when you're building something no one else believes in. And confidence is tested in failure. Anybody can feel good when they're winning. When the applause is loud, the victories come easy. But what happens when you lose? What happens when the world points and laughs? What happens when the door slams shut in your face? That's where real confidence shows up. Real confidence doesn't disappear and failure rises. It says, I may have lost the battle, but I am not defeated. I may stumble, but I cannot be stopped. That's the kind of confidence that can't be shaken, because it's not built on outcomes. It's built on identity. Understand this. Unshakable confidence isn't just about believing in yourself when things are good. It's about believing in yourself when everything looks impossible. It's about walking into the ring, into the boardroom, into the classroom, into life, the mindset. I am enough. I am ready. I will not be broken. Even if you're scared, even if you're doubted, even if you're standing alone, confidence says, I belong here. And don't think for a second that confidence means never feeling fear. No, fear will always show up. Doubt will always whisper. The difference is that confidence speaks louder. Confidence says, fear, you can walk beside me, but you will not guide me. Confidence says, doubt, you can knock on my door, but I will not let you in. That's unshakable confidence, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear make your decisions. So carry yourself like you already belong. Walk with your head high, not because you're pretending, but because you know the truth. Your worth is not up for debate. Your power is not up for negotiation. Your destiny is not up for sale. When the world tries to shake you, when people try to tear you down, when failure tries to scare you, stand tall. Stand unshaken. Because confidence, real confidence, is not what you show when life is easy. It's what you live when life is hardest.